Hi, this is Pete Ekman with the RoboZone podcast. This is episode 220. Can't believe we're in the 200s. That started last year. I haven't podcasted in a little while. I'm a little rusty. A little rusty. I'm going to put the oil in the joints like the Tin Man and get going. So let's do some introductions before we get into this. Okay. First up, Mr. John Burdett. Introduce yourself.
Sure. I am head coach of FRC Team 4327 Cube Ranch Robotics based out of Battle Creek, Michigan.
And next up, we have Corey Walters. Please
I am
introduce
Corey.
yourself, sir.
I am Corey Walters. According to Pete, two-time champion. I am neighbors to John Burdett in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Yeah, we're all neighbors. We're all
That's
within
true.
half an hour of each other.
And we could have
So
met in person. We could have done this in person.
we could have, or we could build an alliance together. Just saying. Anyways, so what I love is the first episode of the year because for me personally, as a self-professed nerd, although I didn't get to compete in this great thing we call first, like Corey did, um, I love kickoff. Kickoff is my Super Bowl. I could care less, but go Lions before I get flamed in some comments. Um, I love kickoff. Kickoff is my fave. I'm more excited about kickoff than Michigan State championships because you never know what's going to happen. It's kind of like an Apple release. I remember when the first iPhone came out. Yes, I'm old, but it's awesome. So, John, give me your first unadulterated, of course, clean reaction to Rescape.
I think this is super exciting. This is fun having two different game pieces, and although it is a bit of a pick and place, I think it's going to be vastly different than the last couple of years, where clearly the game design committee has chosen to go the route of let's avoid those high speed collisions by putting all the cycling on the same side of the field. But I think there are a few interesting defensive strategies or interactions that can take place at higher levels of play.
Okay, that was a really good synopsis. We're going to dig into that. Corey, give me your unadulterated clean uh reaction to Rescape.
I think it was boring.
It was boring.
There was there's no wow factor. If I'm an audience member and I'm watching it, or if I'm coaching it, participating, the technically the hardest challenging thing is hanging from a deep cage that is 2 inches off the ground. And if I'm a spectator watching, okay, I see robots putting PVC on pipes and they're putting balls into giant goals. And then the robot's got to hang off of the ground. We know physics wise it's a really tough challenge, but there's not this, oh wow, that's really cool. Can you imagine they just did that when somebody first sees a robot? So there's no wow factor for me.
But but I always compared this to the game that I absolutely hated from first, and that was Recycle Rush. So it's better than Recycle Rush. So anything's better than Recycle Rush, right?
Right.
Come on, give me that
I'm
one.
not saying it's worse than Recycle. I'm just saying there isn't like, oh, that's really cool. It's just kind of like, okay, it's a all right. This is what we're gonna do. All right, let's go do it.
So, my when I was sitting in the, I love, I told you I get goosebumps before they release the game. When I saw the game, I was like, huh, this is nothing like the preview, like the teaser. They had nothing, I was in my head, I was like, oh, we're gonna have to put these pipes in this box and lift the box all together as an alliance somewhere because that's what the video said with the two talking fish, but that's not what we saw. Um, I like the game, but I'm holding my full reaction to that until we play the game. Um, because sometimes, and we'll see what happens in week one. John, I don't know about your team, but mine and Corey's team are competing against each other and with each other at St. Joe's this year. Are you a week one, John?
Yeah, we're actually going a little bit out of town for week one. We're going to go out of Michigan for that one. We're going out of
Okay.
Vancouver.
Oh, Vancouver.
Ooh,
Oh, Canuck style. You get some what's that? Poutine.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're going to get some poutine.
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. So I like every game except for that one that I talked about because there were no bumpers on it, and it was it was what it was. Um, but I think there are a couple aspects. I don't know if you guys knew, but update number one
Hmm.
for the game manual came out today, which kind of clarified a couple things. I don't know if you guys saw that one of the big things, and I jump in full feet like Chief Delphi for hours at a time, whether I'm on a business call or whatever. I'm researching, right? So one of the big things was talking about the processor this year, right? About how you could starve the other team by not processing the algae or algae, however you want to pronunciate it, depending on where you watch it on the internet. I call it algae. Um, but they have to continually process. They can hold two, but they have to process the rest. So that was a big thing because they were talking about Chief Delphi. Oh, well, maybe we just won't process anything, wait to the end and start throwing things, right? So at least some clarifications come out. Um, John, you talked about defense. Let's talk about defense. I always like defense. Defense wins championships, at least in sports, maybe other than first. So talk about your defensive stuff that piqued your interest.
Well, so when my team gets the kickoff, we spend a good hour and a half or so playing the game as humans and trying to simulate cycle times and strategies and stuff. And then one of the things we tried out was, what if you had robots that just focused on the algae, right? And like you had algae specialists along the way. And we kept finding like that's not really helping anybody. And why was that? And so we eventually figured out, oh, okay, so in order for me to get points from algae, I'm then handing it to my opponent who can then score points. And so for me to cycle the algae again and again and again, by like missing the trench at the top or whatever the net,
Mhm.
top of the barge. For me to just keep cycling the algae is just eventually just this contest between the two of I got six, you got six, I got six, you got six, and you're never like netting, if you will, more points than the other. So I guess one of the things about strategy for defense is like, when do I score those algae? It's is it like the very last 10 seconds so the human player doesn't have enough time in order to put those up into the net? Like, are you purposely not processing them? Like, not as in like you're hoarding. We know that the team update one is saying you can't do that, but are you withholding scoring them until the very end? Because otherwise, you're just again in that contest between you and your opponent of scoring six, scoring six, scoring six, scoring six, scoring six, etc. So I think that that'll eventually come into play. I don't know what are your thoughts on that one?
So you may correct me, and I don't know if that I haven't read update one. I just heard about it so far. But when
Mhm.
we analyze the game by scoring in the processor, you get six, but they can get four because they can toss it into the top. So you still are netting two.
Oh no, I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree on that one.
Okay.
But like as far as like pursuing that as
Oh,
a
you mean them
total
doing it and
strategy.
us doing it? Yeah, I got it. I thought you were
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about in the same
In
side.
order to keep
Sorry.
scoring algae, you need your opponent to keep giving it back to
Yeah,
you, right? So you're
that's
gonna run
true.
out of algae pretty
Or
quick.
missing or
So
missing. But
right.
if I could channel my inner Clinton Bollinger, because Corey knows, because him and John have probably talked about this through a group text already, is that there's only certain amount of LG on there. So, like one of the strategies that one of my teammates came up with was, I think it's very important that well, this year you can only have one robot on the other side at any one time. Is to go grab one of the LG and bring it back to our side, right? Strategy that could happen. Um, but there's just some things, we talked about. Corey, what do you think about defense this year before we get into the scoring pieces, which everyone cares about?
Yeah, all scoring stuff. It's very like 2019-esque, right? You can only have one robot on the other side of the field. Um, the protected zone of like scoring is different, right? So you have a big circle you can
Mhm.
go and score in, and you protect it. I think it's like a major foul, I believe, but don't like quote me on that if you're in that zone. But when you're in the load station, you're totally vulnerable to getting hit. But there's two load stations, and the load station is wide. And the pinning rule change for those who haven't read the rules yet. The pinning rule is now 3 seconds instead of five. So it just makes it worse for the defender. It's like I can't even pin you that long like you could last year against Madtown at Worlds. You can't even pin them as long as you used to. So it's like, yeah, you can get there, you can get in the way, but they have an entire circle to get to. So you almost have like a 2022 aspect of it where like your goal is the circle. I have a circle I can get into the reef to score. So how do I block that when they have infinite entry points and exit points and two load stations that are wide? So it's doable. I don't know if it'll be as effective as we normally see it. You can do it, but I don't know if you're going to do as much harm to the offensive robot as traditionally you could.
So in the state of Michigan, because we're all three of us in the state of Michigan, we have this new rule where you have to have hands free when you're in the car. You can't interact with your phone. So I listen to YouTube videos while I'm in the car specifically for Reefskate, right? And one there was a strategy one out there that I was listening to on the way home, and the gentleman, and I don't know his name, but I'll put it in the show notes, said that one of the viable defensive strategies may be rather than blocking the entire coral station, is to just pester the guys to go from one station to the other station, because if you take up that between the driver's wall to that protected zone and you just go back and forth to the coral stations following, let's say, strike force, right? Going back and forth and just annoying the living crap out of you, you have to go around. One of the things is they may drive around the reef, which would slow their cycle times down, right?
Yep. Yeah. You can still be effective. You can still do all those things. It's just you have a nice protected zone and you have lots of places to load from. It's just going to be challenging.
Sure. Sure.
Yep.
I think first wanted to slow us down, right? Because we were moving at 20 feet a second, 22 feet a second, depending on what team you talk to and what drive. Well, of course, swerve we're talking about, other than the Comets, because they finally went swerve. So, I'm going to get a nice text after this one from their head mentor, because they went swerve. But they used to drive tank like a swerve. So, Swerve's still very viable this year, although Tank Drive could be very viable this year. But if a defensive bot, you probably want a Swerve bot as a defensive bot on the other side of the field just to have more maneuverability. Would you guys
Mhm.
agree to that piece?
Yeah, and coming back to Corey's point, those you've got two, they're really wide stations. If you look at the dimensions, it's 76 inches wide as far as the opening is concerned. So you can easily fit two robots side by side. So I'm not convinced the pestering strategy is going to play out with that regard. Unfortunately, I wish it would, but to make this game more interesting, to Corey's point. But I'm not convinced with the generous size of the coral stations and the fact that there's two of them. We're going to see that kind of strategy play out.
Yeah, that makes sense. So now that we can't, so there's a lot of different rule changes that happened this year, right? You can't go through the opposing's cages through
You
that
can
area.
you
It's an
can
automatic.
just don't touch anything.
Okay, but how are you going to get
Yeah,
through unless
don't
you're
touch it.
you know, unless you're illegally have bumpers that are shorter to the ground than what the deep cage can sit off of, you're going to hit something. So your defensive bot, whoever's going to play defense, has to be smart, right? I mean, I'm saying if you have a rookie team, I wouldn't necessarily send them on the other side to go play defense because I don't want to give away points. But that's me as a alliance partner and a drive coach. So you just have to be smart this year. You really have to know the rules again this year. But what do you guys think about the ranking point change, John? Oh, Corey,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hit Corey right
So
in the gut with that one. But
so what I'm most interested in the way they did it 3v1 and then had three possible ranking points as bonuses is that, and I don't know mathematically how this is possible or how this would play out, but you could win a match with no bonus ranking points, and now your opponent loses the match but gets all three ranking points, and then they outrank you. So you could lose to somebody, or you could win against somebody, and then they move up ahead of you in the ranks. I think that's an edge case, but it's a reality, and I think that'll be fun the first time it plays out.
I want to see that happen. What do you think, Corey, about the ranking
Well, I
points
mean,
this year?
if you win, you get 3 RP, and the most you can
Right,
get losing is 3 RP.
right.
Oh,
So
excuse me. I'm so sorry. You're right.
yeah, I thought that same thing when I saw that rule. It's like, oh, I could lose and get 2 RP, and the loser gets three situation, or I could win and get two, and they get three. Um, five of the RP is could be done by one robot, right? So you can win a match by yourself, you can climb a deep cage by yourself, and you can probably score what's the other one? Oh, get the auto and the auto one, right? You can do all those things with one robot with some prep work. The 15 to 20 coral you need to score, though, on the other hand, you better be booking if you're one robot. Because even cycle times in 2019, you're not one robot was barely doing 15.
But what about the cycle times that were it was absolutely nuts in 2023, right? There was robots going clear across paths and coming and putting cones on the top. Can't
Right, but
remember.
they were doing like 12 to 13. They weren't doing 15. Now, granted, they're driving full field, right? They're still doing a lot. But in 2019, your cycle times, I guess, were closer, right? Like,
Yeah. Yep. But I want to clarify something that you
but it's
said
not,
though.
yeah, it's even with 15 cycles, you still have to do at least 2 cycles of the algae to get that
Yep.
co-op thing down. So it's really 17 cycles instead
But
of 20 cycles.
but a single robot can't get um the barge climb. You have to have 14 points for the climb.
Correct.
Right, but if you can do the deep cage climb and someone else has to park, like
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I
it's
read that as one robot, like two die, and you're on there deep by yourself. You can't get
right,
that ranking point
right,
unless someone else just parks in the zone.
right. So
So,
like 5 RP, one like ridiculously good robot can get
mhm.
done with little assistance from their
True.
partners.
Unless you
But
have a rookie team, unless you have a rookie team that doesn't have an auto and can't pull out of the zone in Auton, because you won't get that one.
then you need to prep better and you need to go
Help them.
do some advanced strategy to make sure they drive
Yes,
across the line.
help them. Make sure it's communicate. So communication is the key this year, right?
Yep.
With all the alliance partners. Um, I thought the ranking point change is good and bad. I think it levels out a little bit of the field, especially that co-op or the co-opetition one. I know 2 years ago when they start this co-op stuff, it wasn't really a factor. Last year it got a little bit into it, but this year, it really brings it. In fact, on Chief Delphi again, people are talking about, well, what if the other team doesn't put two through the processor? Well, I'll go grab one and put it through the processor if I know I can get a guaranteed ranking point out of it. Why can't I? There's nothing in the rules saying I can't score on both processors.
Well, the processor doesn't get your ranking points. The processor lowers the threshold to get ranking points in the
Right.
on the reef.
Wait, I thought you get the cooperation ranking point by putting two through the processor.
It's not a ranking point. It's just a co-op point.
Oh, co-op point.
Yeah, it serves
Okay.
as a tiebreaker
Oh, that's right. That's
in the
right.
rankings.
I got it. Sorry. There's a lot of rule changes this year.
There's a
And
lot.
a lot. So, John, what's another big change this year that really caught you off guard when you started reading through the manual?
Well, I don't know if it's going. It caught me off guard because I, like you, are on Chief Delphi far too often, and get those updates over the summer. But I am concerned about rookies showing up, assuming the bumpers are the same, or not understanding how the alliance selection has changed, things along those lines. Because take for example FTC, they changed this year. Instead of for the past several years, they've had the alliance markers be red squares and blue circles, and it was communicated again and again and again and again and again with the manual saying, "Hey, this year there's hard backers. You got to have this exact style of font or whatever it is for their markers." And we host an event, and out of 36 teams, there was probably a good 14 that showed up and didn't have the right markers. We had to sit there and figure that out. So I am concerned about people not reading the bumper rules, how the backing has changed. I mean, I know it's giving more degrees of freedom for what they can do on that one, or the alliances. So I'm just concerned at their first events, they're going to be caught off guard with how that all happens.
Talk about the alliance selection change.
So the number one thing is a matter of they're gonna be caught off guard just visually seeing like why are there three people out per team now instead of just one member, and the fact that an adult can be out there as well with the students, having the clock kicking excuse me, counting down on the alliance selection itself. So knowing your time limits, knowing your ability to have people out there is going to be something that people need to pick up quickly. And I hope that gets communicated as best as possible before people get caught off guard.
Yeah. So read the rule book again. Read the rule book.
Yep. Yep.
Corey, what other changes to the rule book really caught you off guard that we haven't already talked about?
Definitely the alliance selection is really sticky. If you do build your traditional bumpers like you normally do, you're okay. The rules still allow for all the traditional. If in case you don't read it, as long as it come with the same stuff, you're okay. Um, there is a rule in there which kind of comes back to the bumper thing where like the inspectors aren't allowed to like open up team bumpers anymore. And the teams do not need to provide what is in their bumper from a softness standpoint. So you can't cut open someone's fabric in their bumper and say, I want to see what's inside. Is that a 2.5 inch noodle or a 3 inch noodle? They can't do that anymore. So I read that. Um, I don't know if it's necessarily good or bad. For the most part, teams stay in good graces as far as what they have to do. So I don't think that's gonna be a big problem.
What about the weight
Hey,
The
change?
Corey, how
weight
many people?
changed.
Yeah,
Weight
about to
change.
say, how many people do you think are going to get caught off guard coming in at 125
Oh
pounds?
yeah, that's gonna happen. You might even try to be under. You might even try to hit 115 and still be overweight because 115 is still a tough mark to hit. Yeah, definitely that. 115 pounds, and then your robot can't be over 135, and if your robot weighs less, your bumpers can weigh more. So, like, I get why they're doing it, but as long as you stick to the rule that you have to be under 115 and your bumpers have to be under 20,
You're good.
you're golden.
And this isn't going to be a high impact year like past years. I mean, we already talked about that. I don't think you're going to see as many collisions as we usually do, which is anticlimactic because I kind of like watching two full robots go at full force. We did it at Lakeview or not Lakeview. We did it at in Grand Rapids, and we took out the team that we almost won the event with. So it was awesome to see the two smack. But yeah, a little anticlimactic there because I like speed. And Corey, you know, because you guys kind of pioneered one of the teams that pioneered the use of swerve in FRC.
Yep.
So the weight thing really kind of shocked me. It makes sense, but I understand. Though we have new robot radios this year for us for our teams that didn't go to Worlds. I have no experience with them. Corey, do you want to talk a little bit about those? There's
No,
any
you're asking the wrong guy. I know that there's dip switches, and you got to be careful about how you put power into them so you don't blow them up because they will also blow up your own Raspberry Pis, Orange Pis, whatever, because they'll also output power as
okay.
well. Read the rules on it. Don't think that's not my. I got a bunch of other stuff to worry about. That's not wonderful.
I can talk to a little bit on that one, just trying to explore that before the season began and figuring things out. So something that's a big difference for teams is a matter of your laptop likely will not directly connect to your robot. So you're actually going to need two radios if you're going to be practicing at home wirelessly. So the first radio, of course, is on your robot, and then the second one needs to be programmed as an access point, but you can't directly plug it into a wall because you need a 12 volt. And so this is the frustrating part is that the documentation, and bless their hearts for Vivid Hosting for making this thing, which is cool, but the documentation keeps talking about a wall adapter known as a VH117, which doesn't exist on their website, exists on West Coast products at $30 a pop. And I'm going to give you a little spoiler for anyone who wants to go out there.
They're sold out.
That exact same item is available on Amazon.com for $7.99. So feel free to have at it. I don't know if it's literally the same manufacturer. I'm not going to sit here and make that claim, but I know it works exactly the same at my house. So you can plug that into the wall. It plugs into the power over Ethernet, and it powers up the access point just fine. Just make sure it's a 12 volt output, 1 amp output for power over Ethernet, and you're good to go.
Okay, so
So,
curious, what
yes,
happens?
sir.
Because we got one free. We got one free as part of the kit. Oh, ours was missing. Ours was missing. I had to file one of those missing part forms today. Um, but what about teams that only have one? How are they
Well, lucky
gonna
you.
drive the robot at their facilities?
So, well, there's a couple options there. So that's what Corey was talking about was a matter of those dip switches. So if you go to the dip switch number 3 and you switch that from the off to the on position, that changes it from a 6 gigahertz down to a 2.4 gigahertz, and then you can access it
Okay.
directly from your laptop. But again, that's down with the dip switches. And as Corey said, you got to be careful because if you switch on numbers 1 or 2, then that powers auxiliary ports 1 and 2, which again is fine if you're trying to give power to something, but don't go plug in something into that you don't want power going to if the dip switches are on. So that's been fun to explore. And again, if I was a newer coach, I would be totally befuddled as to why my laptop isn't connecting to the radio, even though the light is on. But again, you need two. One is programmed as an access point, and the other one is on your robot.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Corey, what else about the game? Let's go back to the game, right? Not necessarily all the foo-foo stuff, which is radios and stuff like that. Um, what do you think about? I know that something that I read, of course, in Chief Top 5 before I read it anywhere else, was that our LG or LG, however you say it, are made of two different types of materials. Like they
Oh,
have
just,
two different
they
patterns on them.
they can just chill out. It's fine. Like you guys can that whole thread, you can all just calm down. Okay? It's not gonna make a difference. Just
Corey, the moderator, said, "Chill out." Got
chill
it.
out. Like it's okay. Oh, the texture is different. You're fine. You're fine. You're using a big old compliant wheel and it's a pneumatic ball. You're fine. It don't matter.
Okay, I'll give you a different question. What do you think about have you been following the Robot in 3 Days groups? There's a ton of them out there this year.
There's
So
a
what do you
lot.
think?
I think they're doing really good. Like I saw one that climbed the deep cave. I've seen someone that had big claws. Like they're doing good stuff. Like they're doing really good things that accelerates the teams that don't have the resources to build those things that quickly. So I think there's some really good resources out there. Um, the argument some people do is that they take away the acts of discovery that the students might experience of like, oh, I just did this cool thing and see how that reacts for the first time. So you just kind of see other people experience it.
Mhm.
Um, there's pros and cons to that, and you can argue on that all day and whether it's good or bad. But there's some really good resources out there for teams to draw inspiration from to grow on.
Well,
But
they
there
do a
is a
lot of
lot of them.
testing too, though, right? There's a lot of testing that can save small team. I have a small team, very small team. It saves resources and time to where it was something we can think of in our strategy session. Strategy dictates design. I borrowed that one off the Bollingers, and I still use it to this day. Look it up. It's an amazing resource when you're doing a kickoff. Um, or for the engine nerds, of course, I want to make sure I mention that, or Clinton will text me. Um, but I think it's a good fallback plan too, right? If there's teams that get too far into the weeds about design or testing of that nature, and you guys are just struggling and you're running out of time because there's time crunches in first, go figure. Um, but I think it's a good resource to try to one, find out testing stuff that's already been done, and two, just if you had an idea, see if it worked on something, and like an idea you already had. Well, oh, let's do a C clamp, kind of like 2000, well, Deep Space, 2019, or was that 18? Yeah, 19.
19. You got it.
Yeah, so very similar because Corey, you brought that up. You said 2019 a couple times now. I love Deep Space. That was a good game. I liked the game, but it sucked for the people in the stands because the rockets were right in the middle of everything, right?
Yeah.
So back to John, what do you think about where was I going with that? All the Robot in 3 Days stuff that you've seen so far.
I struggle a little bit with how many there are now, to be honest, and trying to find every single channel that's going on. But I'm with Corey here as a matter of they're doing good stuff. I've liked what I've seen. In fact, just tonight, Rev dropped their Rev starter bot, which again, a lot of the mechanisms are looking very, very similar to each other. I appreciate all the testing that they're doing. I like what the unqualified quokkas are doing down there. I like what Cranberry Alarm is showing so far. They had a great robot last year. I saw a lot of both the states and the worlds. There was a lot of representation of that particular model. Absolutely, yeah. A lot of people, and it's great. Again, for a low resource team or not a little bit. That those are great resources overall. Free, yeah, yeah, I can see that, but do you want to spend 3 weeks of your build season coming right back around to the exact same conclusion? Feels good in the end, but now you've spent half your build season playing in the mud. So just, in my opinion, cut that out and then build on what they've got. Don't
Yeah.
copy, build on what they've got.
Yep.
So I know in the past, especially with Power Up, Corey, you guys are one that pioneered the suction vacuum onto the third level, which a lot of teams may have borrowed. Some
Yeah.
world champions that year, Brighton Bulldogs, might have
Yep.
borrowed that idea, right? But just seeing a couple teams in the robot in 3 days be able to do it on the deep cage already. Another one that I saw, I can't remember the name. I'll put the link in the show notes. But they used a side climbing mechanism that grabbed with two wheels that grabbed onto the cage and just used its weight against itself to bring it off. And that guy lost his mind and they had to put a sensor thing because he got really excited and might have used a cuss word. And but it was pretty funny. But just to see two teams, and the Penn State team, I watched their review or their reveal that just came out like 20 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago, that just used two forks and just use it to push down to bring it up off the ground. I would have never thought that. I would have never thought to do something like that. So it kind of inspires kids to say, "Oh wow, I didn't even think about that too." So while it may stifle certain teams, I think the younger ones, like the freshmen, are like, "Wow, I didn't even think about that." Where like the juniors and seniors may not have been as impressed. So I think there's a bunch of them out there. The Bison team, it's MSU or something like not Michigan State, but like Missouri
That
State or something like that.
Mizzou.
I mean, yeah, Mizzou.
Yep.
Awesome. I can't wait to these guys. The one thing I liked about last year was like Cranberry Lime because we used their design for inspiration for our team was they go put these robot in 3 days at the end of the month against each other and we see it on the field to see. So something we've seen where everyone knows reveal videos are the best pieces of what your robot do, but when you get into a game situation and see what it can do, I want to see what it can do. I'm not harping on Cranberry Alarm. They do a great job, but their demo today where they tried to get it on L4 wasn't really working. So I want to see it on the field. I want to see it, dump it because their angle is not hitting it correctly, so they're getting it to a certain point and letting the force come over the top of it. So I want to see that stuff.
Yep.
Um,
But it's just as important for the RA3D teams to show what's not working
true,
as much as things
true.
are working. Of
Yep,
like, we tried this and see how it failed. Don't do that, or this is a direction to make it better. Like, don't do like, oh, this cool reveal videos do that all the time. This is
right.
the robot working perfectly. It's like, no, it's like it's okay. You've done this in 3 days. It's okay to tell us what's not working.
Kitbot this year. What do you think about the Kitbot, John?
I think it's very capable. I mean, the fact that it doesn't have to turn around to score, it can, as we pointed out earlier, the cycle time is going to be short because your drive path is just a handful of feet. So I love it. I hope a lot of teams that are just starting out actually do that. And I would just, man, like we were pointing out earlier, if auto is just drive forward, please, thank you. Please build the kit bot and then get it working before you show up to the first event. Please, I'm begging you.
Yes. Although we will help anyone that shows
Yes.
up with a kit of parts. We will help. I know my team will help, and I know John's team will help, and I know Corey's team will help do that. What do you think about the Kitbot this year, Corey?
Take it off that tank drive and slap a swerve on it.
We saw a couple of those last year that took the
I know.
Kitbot and put a swerve underneath
Yep.
it.
If you did nothing else and you took that kit bot with its upper structure and you spent between now and your first competition trying to get a swerve drive running, one, if you get your hands on it, two, get it driving, that thing with the swerve drive, you're doing awesome. And then that preps you for next season because now you know how to do a swerve drive regardless of next year's game. And guess what? If you get that swerve drive and you're 2 weeks from your competition and it's not working, guess what you have? You have a tank drive robot that you just aren't using. Slap that thing back on the tank drive, then go to your event.
Yep. And if there's any rookies that are watching this, and I hope they are because we try to broadcast as much to as many people as possible, make sure look at Omni wheels. If you're running the kit parts chassis, putting Omni wheels on the back of it is so much easier for you to turn, and you're gonna need to turn in this to do the cycles too. So just look at even upgrades to the kit parts chassis. I started a team with the kit parts chassis. It was awesome. We used it for a long time until we saw that you have to do swerve. If you don't do swerve, you're limiting yourself, and that's just dependent on what your resources are, what your team can do, and so on and so forth. So, and we're still this year we're still running MK3s that have been upgraded to MK4 because we don't have the money to buy all new Swerve. But I'm kind of happy because all that stuff's out of stock, and
Yeah.
I have all my stuff. So, what
Yep.
talking about that, John? What did you think about the rule change that came out before the season that says you can still use stuff from last season?
We'll pause real quick. I did want to say one more thing to these rookies who are going to make the kit bot. So, those who are going on to the L2, L3, and L4, they all have to put on the Coral Longways, right? And so putting Coral Longways onto L1 is actually a little bit more challenging. It just doesn't quite fit right. And yes, it can land correctly, whatever else. But if you're, again, I'm just emphasizing, if you're a rookie or new coach or whatever, and you want to just make the kit bot, that is extremely useful because getting sideways onto L1 is very easy with that kit bot. Putting it on long ways is more challenging. Anyway, okay, so with the rule change for that one, I really, 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 really appreciated that because all this time of can we do this beforehand or do we need to disassemble and reassemble these modules or whatever else, trying to play by the rules. And then, so for example, like we get all of our metal anodized at one of our sponsors. And so all these last seasons, I had to like get all the metal, wait until kickoff, and then take them all over to my sponsor and hope they get back in a quick time. And now I was like, hey, all right, new rule. I can anodize everything before. And I know it's not a major mechanism, but that was one of those things I had to do in these 6 weeks. And now I can relax because it's all black for us now and we're good to go. So I loved it. I think it was just a realization of writing the rules the way the culture is anyway. And then in avoiding people being tic-tacky of like, could I not? Like, yeah, just go for it. Yep, you're doing great. Keep it
What do you
up.
think? What do you think, Corey? Because I remember Bag Day. Okay, I remember the nightmares of Bag Day. And there's people that are going to watch and say, "What are you talking about, Pete?" Okay, guys, listen to this. You actually had only a certain amount of time. Then you had to bag your robot and you had to watch it. You just had to sit there and watch it. You couldn't do anything else. You had to sit there and watch it and only work on little things like driver's practice were really important. And then you had to open it up and you had to write things down and you had to be on a gentleman's agreement. They didn't have a camera watching you, and then you had to take it to bag day and unbag it. Oh my God, it was a nightmare. So, Corey, do you think it was a quality of life change, or, tell me what you think?
I'll do one more. I mean, we shipped my robots in crates. We didn't even have bags. I mean, FedEx them out. Um, it helped us tremendously, I can tell you that, because we build a custom swerve drive, and those are not considered major mechanisms. So guess what we did for the past 3 weeks was ran the printers nonstop to get our swerve drive done. Normally we don't have to. Normally we don't do that till the kickoff starts, and then we start the printers for the competition robot. So it just gave us a lot of time to just prepare, just to print the parts we know we're going to use, um, and have them ready. Plus, at the end of every year, we normally have like that first tote you get, that first grade
Yep.
tote. We normally have racks of totes, of totes, of totes, of totes, of just printed pieces from robots in the past that we can never use again. Right. So I might have a pulley from a certain year or this custom gearbox or whatever. Can't use it because I have to rebuild it new every time. So now we're wasting less printed stuff and I don't have to waste as much material. It's just a win for the teams. It's a win for the teams that are preparing themselves. It's a win that you have less waste year to year. And it's like, and stop like, I don't know how to say this, like it was so vendor driven. Like you were better off buying an MK4 module than doing a custom or any and not an MK4, any swerve drive module, for example. You were better off buying a swerve drive module than doing a custom one because you could have that in December. We couldn't have ours in December. We had to build ours in January,
Mhm.
incentivizing teams to not do custom things and to lean on to the past providers.
Right. I'm not gonna get into a vendor. I could get that's a rabbit hole with me. Um, I think it made it a little more fair. Okay. Um, We recycle. I told you we're using MK3s that are upgraded to MK4. Those are now 3 to 4 years old, right? So, a big sustainability piece, I think, with First, and I think that's why they kind of did this in a couple different ways, is for teams to be able to reuse stuff there are teams out there. I'm not naming names. They're two digit teams, and they will send me a text when they watch this. That has a 6-figure budget. I am lucky to have a 4-figure budget, if that. And we scrape together everything we can because guess what? Me and John are in the same area, so we try to go after the same sponsors. He's grinning because he's there already, and then I asked him, "Oh, we already sponsor Q Branch." So John's going to sponsor our team this year. I'm just joking. I'm not putting that pressure on him, although I'm recording this. I'm just saying, recycle. As I get older, I look at everything I throw out and say, do I really need to be buying stuff when there's that much waste? I think there's a lot of waste when it comes to first, and I think it's more of a sustainability for the environment too, right? Or you can give those parts to someone else and have them use them, like 302 did with my very first swerve drive. Oh, I can't say that. The Electro Eagles helped me build my first swerve drive. The one I competed with came from 302. So, thank you, Bruce. I still thank you to this day for giving me those modules. But he had a whole rack of them, right? So anyone that's out there that doesn't have a swerve drive, reach out to the local area that you guys know they have swerve drives and say, hey, what's in your graveyard? Is there something we can use? That's how I got my first set of swerves. Was Bruce and 302 said, yeah, we'll put those together for you, Pete, and had them to me in a couple weeks. So that's what first is all about too, is sharing, right? So John, you can kick over a check anytime.
We'll talk after
Anytime.
the
Yeah, we'll talk about that after this. I mean, do you guys agree? It's can you see the recycling portion of it without saying Recycle Rush? Because I hate that game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something where teams are now, like Corey was saying there, if you're doing things that are custom, if you're now instead of eating up the precious time that we have here in the build season, you're now able to do that in the prep time in the fall. And then reusing old stuff. Again, making it a new thing, of course, adapting to a new game, but it cuts down on waste. And again, it cuts down on time. I think it's just a win overall. I'm loving it.
And Corey, if your team wants to donate a whole set of custom swerve drive modules to my team, I will take those right
You
off your
don't
hands,
want
sir.
our server modules.
You're already ahead.
You
You
don't
said you're
want them.
ahead 3 weeks.
We
See,
we
John, I like asking questions.
we
They're
have a
they're good
lot,
ones.
but like we've had some other teams try to build our server modules on their own, and then they say we're gonna buy some. Like ours are really good, but it comes at a cost.
Yes.
It
Yes.
comes at a time cost, and then some experts we have on our team that make it happen. And if they
You have
weren't
the
around,
resources. You have the
yeah, and
resources.
if those individuals weren't around, we would buy server modules. But they're here, and we know what we're doing. I think we actually have a set of swerve modules in Hawaii. To be fair, we sent a swerve set to Hawaii for Hawaii Labs years ago. There's a set in Hawaii, but they don't. They're maintenance items. There's not a we know how to work on them, but to give them to somebody and then they're they would eventually go bad.
Okay. You can always give me a set and a tech book and we'll take care of it.
There's not a tech book. That's the
Oh,
problem.
well, challenge your team, then we get one. What let's talk. We go into these spider webs. This is the first episode of the season, so we started with this, the game, and then we just drive in different directions because there's so many changes this year. Are there any more changes, John, that really caught you off guard with the season, whether it's through the game, gameplay, or just something that, you know, caught you off guard? Let's say that you have to reserve a hotel for Worlds through first. That's a
Oh,
big thing this year. Um, thank God we don't have to do that for MSC, but 'cause there's not enough hotels there. Um,
Right, fair enough. I mean, that's again, I know people complain about that, and I understand the complaints about it, but I guess that's for the fact that only about 16% of teams actually make it to Worlds in the first place. It's a nice problem to have, um, if you're fighting that battle. I get that. But as far as other things that are different this year as opposed to previous years, I think we've covered all the major ones that are running through my brain at this point.
okay. Corey, do you have anything else that caught you off guard?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we've covered most of them, right? The pinning rule, the weight, the bumper stuff. Like you only touch one game piece. I don't know. It's
Wait,
Well,
wait, 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 wait. Wait, go
you,
back.
You only touch one per game piece. You only have one core or one LG. You can't have two core or two LG.
Yeah, I was watching the Cranberry Alarm for their demo today, and there was someone in the chat that was dead set you can only have one. And we're like, go read the rules, man.
Yeah.
It's one per game piece, which is cool.
I do want to say, I think this is the first time. I mean, last year the human player could have some impact on the game, but it was a lucky strike if you got it. I think this is the first time, honestly, since 2014,
Aerial
where the
assist,
human
aerial
player
assist.
truly, yeah, the aerial assist, where the human player truly can have a direct impact on the score of a robotics team, which I think is cool. I like the aspect. I like that part.
Wait.
So
You forgot about the ones that were up in the center of the year. The come on,
The airship, the
Oh, sorry.
two
Yes,
2017.
time
yes, yes.
world
I
champ.
mean, they
2017.
had an impact, but they didn't affect the score, right? If they messed up, they had a spotlight on them and they had one job. And if you did it wrong, you were nothing but in trouble. You didn't affect the score like you would in aerials. So you didn't impact the gameplay. You
Okay.
received a gear and put it up. And if you messed up, you were in deep trouble. Um,
Yeah, people
18,
forgetting to turn the gears. That's right.
yeah,
Yes.
or dropping them.
Or dropping them from
Yeah.
bringing them. Remember, they had to reel them up, and you could
Yeah.
just see them
Yep.
sweating,
Or
and they
they
turned
they go to
red.
put it on the peg and it falls in the field.
Yeah. I
Yep.
felt so sorry for those human players. If you're watching this, you are a human player. I had a lot of respect for you because that was a
Yeah.
lot of pressure.
It's a thankless job because humans have to be perfect during the match. So when you mess up, you're in trouble. And there's no in between. It's either
There was some
perfect
crying up
or
there. There was some
or
crying up there
oh
that
yeah.
year.
Oh yeah. And then you get a red card. Like if you didn't use two hands when you stepped down, right? If you had to walk down it right. If you didn't walk down it right, you get carded. It's like, come on.
Oh,
So,
go
oh, go
ahead,
ahead.
John. Go ahead.
Oh, coming back to Corey's point of like if you're an audience member watching this game, you're right. The deep cage challenge is engineering wise probably the most challenging part of this whole thing. And it's not very exciting to watch a robot lift 1 inch off the ground to technically be, you know, successful with that one. But I do like the human player aspect. If I'm an audience member walking in and I don't know anything about robots, I at least know like they're supposed to get the ball up in the net, and then I can watch them be like they got another one, and like at least that from the audience standpoint is I think a plus for this game.
Yeah.
I think actually the cages are going to be entertaining. Depending on how hard you hit them as you're going through the if you're going on the opposite side, they're going to be like wrecking balls, right?
Yeah.
And there will be some deheading. I'm just saying this to Corey because I've seen his robot get deheaded
Twice. I've done it
at
twice.
yeah, I know. So there are those cool points, right? There, yeah, I mean, fun's got to have something to do in their blooper reel, and that will be one of those
Oh,
cages at full speed coming across and hitting the side of a robot. Make your robots robust this year, guys. Just saying.
especially if it's a shallow cage because it's a headbanger. It's not even hitting your bumpers. Like a shallow cage with a superstructure, that is an 18-pound pinata that wants to hurt you.
Or hurt your swerve modules if you're using MK3s because the motors are on the top. Just saying. Make
Oh,
sure you protect your motors. It's important.
So here's a question for you guys: is a matter of with the rule change being a matter of robot without bumpers is 115, robot with bumpers is 135. Would you this year be making your bumpers up to 135 so that you have a lower center of gravity?
Mm. Don't give my co-mentor a reason to be overly robust. Put quarter-inch stuff all over it like last year.
you also just don't want your bumpers to break. So if you need to, I mean, if you need to that weight down low, that's a good place to put it.
Yeah, if
Like,
you want
and
ballast, right? If you
like
want ballast, that's where to put
it's the
it.
place to put it. I know teams have done that before of weighing them down for structure robustness.
I mean, if you still use pool noodles, and I don't know why I wouldn't, you can always put a metal rod through them.
No, it's got to be foam material.
I'm
Right, yeah.
joking. I'm
But it's okay
joking.
because the inspectors can't open your bumpers anyways. What's going to happen is you're going to get hit and that rod's going to get shot out your robot in the field. And Pete's going to be like, I don't know where that came
I
from.
don't know where it came from.
There's a hole in your bumpers. Whoa.
Hey, I just saying I'm not known to break rules. I am known to hurt the field.
Now, when I put that in, that was a solid polyethylene rod, I swear.
That's a good one, actually. Oh, there is another change this year that just reminded me. There are hooks for your driver station be hooked to the top of the driver's area so that they don't fall. Not that we're going to be hitting the driver's station wall like we did in past years, unless you're real like the Robo Jackets. Oh, she'll get mad at me when I say this. The Robo Jackets would slam into that feeder station in 2022 with every bit of force. In fact, my co-mentor had to repair a couple walls because of it
Yep,
for that
shame,
year.
shame, shame.
Yeah.
How about you just don't mount the driver station platform to the driver station wall? It should be its own freestanding table, not attached to the field. Then when the field gets hit, the tape don't get hit.
That's a good idea. That would be
Solved.
a heavy modification and a lot of extra money that
Yeah,
first has to spend to replace it.
an 18-inch folding table.
Could you imagine a card table behind the
They
driver's
make
wall?
bench ones. They make ones that are 18 inches that are
Yeah,
wide. Put it on there. Don't put it on the shelf.
and they're made out of plastic.
Yep.
I
Or
mean,
how
the
about,
rules say you could bring that to this driver station if you want, right?
oh, it's got to be fully resting. I guess maybe you could. Or
We'll
you could just,
3D print something out of TPU and it has like a cushion and
yep.
it'll just sit there. So
Or you could just update your fields that you have had for the past 25 years.
this is true too. I like how you throw that gauntlet down. That was Corey, the two-time world champ, that said that, not Pete Ekman, the not world champion. Just joking. All right, guys, we've been at this for 55 minutes. So what I'm going to do is we're going to cut it here. You're going to introduce yourselves or just tell us about your team. How do we follow the team? And then in a couple weeks, let's say week one, or after week one and before week two, we'll do an update because me and Corey will be at the same going to week two together. And John, you can tell us how week one happened. How about that? And we'll wish your team luck, of course, for Q
Well,
Branch.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so we'll start with you, John. Tell us how we can follow it, who you are, how we can follow the team.
I'm Coach John Burdett from FRC Team 4327, Q Branch Robotics out of Battle Creek, Michigan. And you can follow us on the best ways through our Instagram. Our handle is at Q Branch 4327.
Corey, you're up next, sir.
I'm Corey Walters, the coach for 2767 Strike Force out of Kalamazoo, Michigan. And you can follow us on all your favorite social media platforms. And if we aren't there, then we don't have one. We'll go to
Okay.
the next one.
Notice how I didn't ask you the killer question that will be, what do you think the max score is going to be coming out of week one? We could break 100.
That's going to be playoffs, I believe. I think you will break 100 that time. I honestly, I think the scores are going to be similar to last year. I know it's a different game, but again, when we played this as humans, we were approaching 150, 170.
Okay.
At some
Uh,
point, we broke 200, but that was us like pumping up the score through algae cycling.
Okay.
yes, people will break, I think, triple digits in quals as well as elims because you're going to get some stacked qual match and triple cyclers and no defense, and they're going to squash the other guys. Um, it's going to happen. There'll be triple digits as far as I think it's going to be. 120.
Okay.
There's a number for you.
Okay. We'll have the side bet and we won't record it, so therefore, you can't do that. Well, you could, but I'm not licensed to do that. Anyways, you guys have a great build season. We'll check in with you in a couple weeks, and thanks for coming on board.
All
Thanks,
right.
Pete.
Thanks, Pete.